Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Why is the middle class shrinking? Why are people facing an affordability crisis while marginalized individuals called informals grow in numbers? Join me as I travel the world, speaking with people living in invisibility, the leaders working to solve it, and uncovering the hard truths shaping our economy and daily reality.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
Well, Sunday morning, time to think about things. With us today is Hank Sheinkopf, Democratic strategist. He's been around forever like I have. And I told him about the party that we had for President Clinton the other night, and how everybody in that room, maybe 100 people, were talking about what does it take to bring the Democratic Party back to common sense. Well, Hank Sheinkopf, you should have been in that room because your ears must have been ringing.
Well, that's kind of you, John, and thank you very much, audience. Listen, it was a different time. If you look at it, and I helped write the ads for the president and shot the first ones that went up in early 1995 because he was electorally in trouble and we wanted to win the race. You know, I remember going through the statistics and we cut ads that talked about, Clinton comes to office, the economy screwed up, the Republicans have made a mess of things, all kinds of chaos. What he did was he stabilized the economy. We were not a debtor nation. The country was at peace overall. And
I remember Hank Sheinkopf. I remember Newt Gingrich and him brought the deficit down, which is unheard of, from $5.5 trillion down to $5 trillion.
It was nothing, and the country functioned better. People were working. The country had gone through a jobs problem. Our rates were outrageous. The cost of things was tough. It was the economy, stupid, as James Carville was smart to say in 1992. And when Clinton had a second term, he did the best he could. There were 2 errors. Welfare reform, he'll tell you, was one. And the crime bill could have been better. But putting 100,000 cops on the street throughout the country meant a lot. The problem is that it didn't capture the people that should have been captured. But look, it was a more rational time. And and he had been a governor. So he understood governance at the most bottom level, and he understood people, and he was a Southerner, which was also important. If you said to him about country music, he'd name anybody who'd ever performed any place, and he'd tell you where. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was, because he was he was much more directed toward the people that needed the services, and he really had compassion, and he also read everything. So what we now have is a generation of Democrats who don't read everything, don't read anything in some cases, who are simply professionals for the purpose of being professionals in government, just like the Republicans. We have the political industrial complex, which cares not about the will of the people, but cares about keeping people on the payroll so they can collect a lot of money for jobs that used to pay very little. They can have pensions. They can have health insurance that most Americans can't afford. So when AOC blabs, I always say, let her give her health insurance away to the people she wants to help, because she's got a better deal than most any other American. It's called the system that the members of Congress have, and a pension and the rest. And we have this political industrial class that's going to stay in power as long as it can, because that's all it knows how to do. It doesn't know how to serve people. It knows how to stay in power and serve itself. And the consultants are part of that, frankly. The whole consultant thing has changed dramatically because the amount of money involved here. So we have a monstrous political bureaucracy kept in power by people who wanted to stay in power, not for the public, but for themselves, and a political class of consultants who really don't care about ideology or anything else. We used to call ourselves warriors. And Joe Napolitan, who's gone now, but who was my mentor and helped create the political business, always said that we were the clarions of democracy. That's not the case anymore. What we are now is the clarions of bank accounts. Whole different thing, John.
Understood. And all we want, the most priority to me is safety for our kids and grandkids that are walking around our city, our states, our country. And
safety is it.
Why is certain Democrats are taking the position that they're representing the criminals more so than the citizens?
Well, they're representing disruption, John, because they seem to think that disruption is a fine thing. And that disruption in the way it is occurring, which is much more violent than it was during the 60s or any other period where you've had the civil disobedience of significant kind, is okay. Why? Because that's what the population seems to want, and they're not interested in restoring order so much as they are in discussing restoring order. And the police have become a liability for some of them, which is a tragedy. You know, the relationship between the public and police has gone through its moments, and the George Floyd homicide, frankly, changed the entire way we view policing in this country. But we need police, and we need courts that are stable, and we need judges that are able to make reasonable decisions based upon the law. What we've created, and even in New York State, is an ideological bench of judges and attacks on the police department, which will ultimately, in New York City particularly, which will ultimately result, depending who's running the place, in chaos and disorder. You know, so that's simple. You cannot have it both ways. And the people we're talking about, John, have never, largely in the streets, have never had a tough day, have never had to put a callus on their hands, are the most pampered generation in history, have eaten more regularly than any other generation ever created, have been housed more regularly, yes, at higher cost, unfortunately, and have frankly stand to gain the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of mankind in the next 10 years or so. So the complaints are overwhelming. The desire to make change is, yes, there. The desire to come up with a platform that makes any sense is not there, because they've been trained very differently. Their interests somehow revolve around foreign affairs, notably obsession with the Jewish state, and ultimately this will deteriorate. Simple, it will deteriorate.
Well, Hank Sheinkopf, anything else you want to tell the American people on a Sunday morning?
Yeah, you have to go back and go back to being what America was. You know, in the great European de Tocqueville, the Frenchman, came to the United States and wrote about it in the early 19th century. He said, this was the most over-organized, most religious place in the world. Well, it's not the most religious place in the world anymore, and it's not over-organized because our civic culture, Masons, Kiwanans, Lions, Rotarians, volunteerism in our hospitals, candy stripers, and on and on and on, and our schools is kind of depleting because this generation of young people coming up don't believe that's important, and we haven't trained them properly. My advice: get back into churches, synagogues, and mosques and create the civic culture and start teaching civics in our schools again, and stop telling children lies. It would be a very good thing, John, if we started doing that.
Well, in this day of AI and the things that are going on the internet and the amount of lies going on the internet, I pray for our culture and civilization. Thank you, Hank Sheinkopf. Let's continue this conversation because it needs continuing, and we'll catch up again real soon.
I hope so, John. All the best to you and your listeners.